Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to another interview. Here's your lovely host, Daniel Acosta, also known as the Vampire. And tonight, I have with me a really interesting guest. This man right here is the mastermind behind the original scoring of Batman: The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2, as well as the later DC Superhero Girls series, and also some side material for the Minions. We have here Michael Gatt. How are you doing, man? How's it going?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks so much for the nice introduction and for having me on. I'm really happy to be here.
Thanks to you, man. And I wanted to jumpstart the interview with a question that many of us musicians and non-musicians have been asking ourselves for a while. What is the main difference between being a TV and film composer as opposed to maybe being part of a band?
Oh, there's a lot of contrast, actually. A lot of differences, I would say, because I actually started out in bands and toured and did all kinds of, made records. And I think for starters, depending on how you approach the craft, it's a solo endeavor, for the most part. I mean, I will say it takes a village to produce and create a film score or TV score. That being said, it's a lot of hours by yourself with your instruments and just going to work. And so juxtapose that with being in a band, there's no one else to show up. It's just you and the blank page, as I would say. And I think that has its own rewards. Certainly a lot of pride of authorship. That being said, it's really fun to collaborate and share the experience with other people as well.
Wow. Yeah, I figure. And you mentioned that you were in bands before. What type of bands were those? What genres were you into?
Oh gosh. I mean, I kind of followed the trends at the time. Everything from, emo rock to grunge to, I'm a guitar player by trade. And that was, so I played in 3-piece and 4-piece and 5-piece bands, and we toured the Southwestern United States and stuff. But this is another lifetime ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were one of these rock-loving teenagers playing in bands and all that stuff, and then you just evolved into
very much so.
TV film composer.
Very much. I love, yeah. Jimmy Page was and is my hero. Eddie Van Halen.
I can relate so much.
Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. But I'll tell you what's really served me well, and what I really appreciate about that experience is that, as you can appreciate as an artist yourself, it is the compound interest of all your experiences. I mean, I'm bringing all my time in the band, the bands I've played in, to every score that I do.
Totally.
So
it's like a ripple effect, and like it's a combination of experiences that built you into what you are today, and such a massively acclaimed TV and film composer. Totally.
Well,
so
I wouldn't have phrased it that way, but I appreciate it.
You really are. You have no idea, man. So, what do you think is different when it comes to like the creative process between maybe going from making a couple of riffs, like a verse, chorus, interlude, guitar solo, to making something that somehow has to complement a piece of visual stimulation on the viewer and enhancing the experience of what is like an episode of a TV series or a film?
Great question. Again, thank you. I would say that for starters, the same thing that can make scoring to picture so daunting is also what can be its saving grace, in that because you are scoring the story that's on the screen, in a way, the music's right there in front of you. The music's right there on the screen in the picture. Of course, that can be defined and interpreted a million different ways, and that's why, as a composer for film and television, the first step is to sit down with the filmmakers and talk about what they want emotionally from each scene, and kind of spitballing and seeing where everything goes. But on the other side of that, it can be very daunting when you first get into it, because I think when you're playing in a band and you're just a free form writing, you're just writing a piece of music. Mm-hmm. There's no walls. So nothing has to land, that it's okay if the downbeat lands, 2 minutes in or whatever. But when you're scoring a picture, especially if it's animation, it is, things do not just fall into place that way. You kind of have to cleverly make it sound like they do, because I'm sure your audience knows, but I'll just reiterate, the picture comes first and then the music happens. But ultimately, your job is to make it appear the opposite.
And suddenly the world becomes a labyrinth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell me something. Do you think as a guitar player when you're scoring film and TV?
No. I mean, I have tried to find a pattern in the way I approach each score and each movie and each TV show, and there is not one. It is just, sometimes it can be, in the context of songwriting, as you know, it's, sometimes you have a riff, like I can build on this, right? Mm-hmm. So in that respect, it's similar in that I might think of a theme, or I might think of a sound signature, or experimenting with manipulating a sound that, okay, there's the seed. I can build on this. And then ironically, sometimes what happens is that the kernel of inspiration that you built up the music on top of ends up being pulled out after it's all done. It's kind of like Jenga, where you're kind of like seeing what, how much you can take out and still have it stand.
Completely. And tell me something, throughout the creative process of making a piece of scoring for film or TV, which parts do you do yourself? Like, do you do the mixing? Do you do the mastering? Do you do the arrangements, everything on your own, or do you get help on some of these spots?
Well, like Long Halloween, the thing I did not do was mix the score. Okay. And I had the luxury and the pleasure of having it mixed by Brad Haehnel, who is like he's one of the top guys in the game. He's one of the top people in the game. He just, I think, recently did Onward, and he mixed the score for Life of Pi, and on and on and on. And I think it's important to remember, for whatever artistic practice you're in, mm-hmm. Do what you're good at or great at. Do what, lean into your strengths. And mixing is a art and a craft entirely unto itself. So that is something that,
completely. And sometimes when you're on the whole composing / arranging / listening to the things over and over again on your instruments, and / recording it, if you're doing the recording yourself, your ears kind of get tired and get comfortable. So like an additional mixing engineer, more often than not, makes it like so that there is a huge difference in terms of enhancements, and it's a completely different perspective. Two minds are better than one. And back when I was starting on the whole music thing, I always heard from many people, like, the big guys usually get one guy for tracking, one guy for mixing, one guy for mastering. And it's like 3 different stages, and like one makes it so that like these guys are so good that mm-hmm. they record so that it doesn't even need editing or mixing, but then they find enhancements through the mixing and makes it sound like it doesn't need a mastering. But then there's a mastering that makes even more stuff, and that's like how you have like this super great all-time recordings that. Yeah, totally love it. And I wanted to ask you, because it's
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I could just add a little bit to that. So for example, Long Halloween is all mixed in surround, and then it was mastered as well by a mastering engineer for the soundtrack. And to your point, it's like I said, I use the word luxury because it really is to have someone with the talent of these people to touch your music, with fresh ears.
Totally. So. And collaboration makes the greatest pieces of art ever seen to man.
Yeah. And I want to remember the name of the mastering engineer. I'm so sorry. Her name is Pat. I can't remember her last name. I think it's, well, I'll get it. Anyways, it is a shout out to Pat. She's amazing, and she's mastered a lot of my scores. So I'm very appreciative.
Absolutely, and those are people that like you're forever thankful with them, because
Yes,
they just
for
made
sure.
they just made like how we musicians, like any kind of artist really,
Yeah.
but we musicians, we're always like, oh my god, this is not good enough. Oh my god, this sounds like crap. What am I gonna do? But then you have like people helping you and like giving you the different perspective that you probably can't get on your own, to say, oh
Yeah,
my god, this sounds nice all of a sudden. Wow.
I think to a point, I agree with you. I would say that, so I scored commercials for 8 years before I got into long form scoring. And for much of that eight years, I was being mentored by other composers. One guy specifically, Paul Robb, who was fantastic. And I would be playing my music for him, constantly asking him, like, what's it need? That kind of thing. But eventually, and I think this is when everything gets a lot more fun. Eventually, I think you get to that place where you just know when it's right. And in fact, you need to know, because if you stay on it too long, you can wreck it. So I really, for example, when I send stuff to Brad, I really try to have it in the form that I really want it to be. And I think that's when he can really shine as well, because then he's elevating, I think something that's already, I hope there,
Totally. Yeah.
So,
Mentors are extremely priceless. There's no way to pay that back, unless you like teaching someone else that probably looks up to you is kind of a good way. And I'm doing it myself in some aspects, mostly guitar. But I think,
and by the way, I agree 100%. That's exactly how I try to pay it forward as much as I can.
Totally, man. Cool. That's what art's about. It's about sharing, And recently we had Eddie Shankar here on an interview, and he said something really interesting, which is how it would seem like artists compete, but they really don't. There are corporations creating competitions, and they enroll the artists in those competitions to create like competitive products, and that's sort of true. Like the difference between like maybe being an engineer, being a medic, or being a mechanic or a lawyer versus an artist is that art comes from the soul. It comes from the soul, and we share, and we have this chemistry. I was super hyped, like, oh my god, we're gonna have Michael Gatt on the website, and I feel especially hyped because he's a musician and so am I. So you know how it is. But also, I wanted to add to that how it's a whole different discipline to keep your picky inclinations at bay, because like picky people, usually you have like 30 minutes of music and you spend a whole year trying to do things to make it better, and all of a sudden you're in like this rabbit hole, this endless loop where you've been working on it for so long that it just doesn't come out, or it comes out, and the magic is suddenly lost. It's not even the same type of inspiration anymore. So, I personally adopted like this practice of releasing things quickly, even if they don't sound all that great, because that way I know the next one will sound better, and the next one, and the next one. But at least I'm releasing content, and that's what people like nowadays. It's having something to consume every single time they check on that. So, this brings me to another question. Because how technology has been making things extremely easier for us in the form of digital audio, DAWs, plugins, all that stuff. So when you do your scores, in terms of the many musicians that you will technically involve there, do you go with real musicians that you hire to record them on a studio? Or do you prefer like more of a easy way, like Contact or Spitfire, or one of those super flashy plugins that recreate instruments that way?
It is really a combination, and I just rewind to your last comment for a second about letting go. I very often I read something where when Hemingway was writing, he would stop mid-sentence when he knew he was getting ready to call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back the next morning, he could finish that sentence and he'd get back into the flow of things. And I purposely, at the end of my writing day, stop in the middle of a cue because it's going to sound completely different the next morning.
Okay.
So I think what you said is really powerful about not just knowing when to let go, but also stepping back from things. I think, I mentioned before the official interview started that I just went to the park with my wife and our two dogs. And that, I think, is when actually the music writing actually happens. It's when you're not in the studio.
Totally.
Anyways, as far as, live musicians and the technology that's involved, whenever possible and whenever appropriate, I'm working with live musicians, and it's a project to project basis. I've had the absolute pleasure of recording with the LA based musicians on the Warner Brothers stage, and I've recorded in Nashville, I've recorded overseas, and it's been fantastic to be in a room with that many people
so inspiring
playing your music. It's just it's phenomenal. It's great. That said, there's other scores that may not call for it. I mean, Batman Long Halloween is almost entirely synthesizers and sound manipulation.
Yeah, I did see that.
But even there's some live. There's actually guitar in the score for Long Halloween. Mm-hmm. It's just very subtly manipulated, and I think maybe something that may be, I don't know, helpful from the craft perspective is that even if I'm doing a synthesizer driven score, there's always something live happening in the score.
Totally.
Here and there, because that's where our ears go to. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but yeah. I think it's very it's very project specific. Yeah,
so tell me something, Mike. When was the point where young Michael Gatt, playing on rock bands and emo bands and grunge bands, like you'll just snap out of it and you say like, okay, I want to make something different. I want to be a composer. I want to make music for commercials. I want to make music for animations, cartoons, scoring for movies. Mm-hmm. So when did that happen? Like, who was, if we're allowed to know, like, who was the person who inspired you to make that change in your process and change in your results as well?
Well, I will try to give you a short answer to a long story, but
go with the long story if you want to. We'll love to hear it.
Well, I had been pursuing, music in bands for most of my life, and had some marginal success and put some records out and that kind of stuff, but nothing of note. And at one point, I just felt like I'd had it. I had been kind of living a deferred life plan. I knew I wanted to travel the world, and I thought that music was going to take me there, but it just wasn't materializing. So at one point, I just basically quit and said I was done with music. And at that point in my life, I sold all of my possessions and I went backpacking, and I ended up picking up work with like these wildlife documentaries, Discovery Channel and Animal Planet. And what ended up happening was I would get to a new place. Like, for example, the first place we went to was Galapagos Islands. And I said, I'll go, but just leave me there. And then I ended up spending a year in Latin America after that one trip with them. And then I was living in Rio, and they called again and said, will you go to India for another Animal Planet shoot? I said, sure, just leave me there. And that led to years of traveling. And it was when I came back, a dear friend of mine's wife owned a music company and said, you're good with music, you're good with computers, you should try your hand at TV commercials. And I said, sure, why not? And I ended up winning some pretty big campaigns, like right off the bat. And it was that kind of, I don't know if you want to call it beginner's luck or just, whatever it was. I was so inspired to be actually, making music and the opportunity to potentially, make a living making music. That's when I got into scoring music for picture. I know this is long-winded, but I'll keep going. All right. So, and so then because I spent 8 years writing commercials and I ended up, kind of putting up my own shingle and doing my own thing with sound design. And I was just saying yes to everything. People ask me, could you produce radio? I say, yes, let's do it. Let's do radio now. I was doing radio spots. I was doing sound design. I was just saying yes to anything that I could be creative in the sonic arena, if you will. And then I ended up scoring some documentaries for Shark Week because I had actually worked with Shark Week for many years in the field.
That was so popular. I remember it.
Yeah. It's believe it. It's
like the Discovery Channel was all about Bear Grylls and Shark Week, literally.
Yeah. Well, I have seen and swam and been around sharks for many, many years now, and they've been very good to me. So
clearly,
yeah. So anyways, I guess the hopefully the takeaway from what I'm sharing is that you just don't know this. What I'm doing today was not the goal at the beginning. It's just like what happened along the way. Mm-hmm. That being said, I can't imagine a better place to be. I absolutely am thrilled to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, you know how I love it how you were smart and humble enough to realize when things were not getting into the shape that you wanted them to get, and you just took a step back. It's like riding a bow before shooting the arrow. You just took a step back and rethink the whole thing, and then you came back like completely new, much more powerful, and things started happening. And man, I really love it. And tell me something. Who's your favorite film composer?
I have been asked this before, and I will give you the same answer because it's authentic. And well, first of all, it's kind of like asking someone who their favorite band is.
Or who your favorite guitar player is.
Yeah. It's like we all have people we like for certain things. I would say overall, the composer that I have the most respect and admiration for is John Williams. I mean, he's really, truly a master of the art and the craft.
Biggest of us all. And and you know how you have nowadays and these are people I'm really, really thankful with, like so many big YouTubers that touch on the film scoring thing, especially Rick Beato. I don't know if you've seen Rick Beato, guy's amazing. And how you find video after video of intricacies within the Star Wars scoring.
Yes, yeah.
They're just completely endless. Last thing I saw was Rick Beato himself actually explaining the level of focus within the chords, how they use 14 trumpets with one note and then 2 trumpets on a fifth and one trumpet and a third.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. He was explaining this and relating it to cowboy music and all that stuff. And that's why I never get tired of being a musician. There's always something new to witness, something new to learn. Someone that you don't even know comes up to you and shows you this super crazy idea. And you're like, what? What's going on?
And that also, I mean, I feel compelled to mention too, that's also not always or necessarily with Williams, but in almost any film score you hear, and I mentioned this at the beginning of our interview, that it's a village, it's a team of people that are bringing all of their. I mean, if you sit on a scoring stage in Los Angeles, the sum of the years spent for of the combined amount of years of experience and the instruments that are in that room, and then the people behind the mix desk, and then the orchestrator, that if the composer brought an orchestrator on to orchestrate the piece, and then like we talked about the mixer. I mean, you really are. I mean, for better, for worse, I think often for worse, we live in a culture, I think globally, that focuses on the one. Everyone talks about someone's speech, but never, the 5 people that they ran it by before they did it, and so on and so forth. But I think that is really the story of making music, right? Like you were saying, music is about sharing, and being an artist is about sharing, and that includes all the collaboration.
Completely. Yeah. And how long did it take for you to score the two parts of The Long Halloween?
That's a good question. It was, oh my gosh, I think it was 2 months. Excuse me, 2 months per movie.
Really? That's super
Start
fast.
start to finish. It's a little bit of a blur. I was doing the TV series, the Superhero Girls TV series at the same time, and also went right into this Teen Titans Go Superhero Girls movie right after. So whatever I tell you as far as the calendar time, I can tell you the literal time as far as the hours put in were just endless. I mean, that is part. I have been trying to thread that needle my entire career as far as how to not, there's very little work-life balance when you are a composer. Let's put it that way. The two blend into each other.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, like, what was when you got called by Warner to score a whole Batman movie? Like there are so many big guys behind previous Batman scores. You have Danny Elfman, you have Hans Zimmer, you have like all these gods of film scoring. So how did you approach it? Like from the moment of the proposal onward, how did you approach it, and how did you say, okay, how am I going to do this? And what ideas do I have? What could I possibly offer to a Batman movie that ended up being so acclaimed as this Batman scoring was? It has been a while, really, since the scoring of an animated movie was that acclaimed. And all of a sudden, The Long Halloween comes out, amazing movie, 2-part movie. You could spend an entire afternoon binging that, and you're not gonna get bored. It's really, really cool. And like, how did you keep up to that? What happened that all of a sudden your scoring is one of the things that has people talking about the movie?
Well, I'm thrilled you like the movie, and I certainly appreciate the kind words that you've been saying throughout the interview. Well, first of all, it's going to sound cliche to say this because it's Batman, but I am such a huge Batman fan.
Everyone is. Let's be honest. Everyone is.
It's like
asking people, "Are you a fan of pizza?" No.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And I'm a big on a personal level. Exactly. On a personal level, I'm a big fan, and still do this to this day, of writing down the results I want and working backward. And I've applied that to my artistic path for many years. And about 7 years ago, I wrote down results, score a DC animated film, preferably a Batman film. Like that was the result. And I just started plotting and trying to do anything I could to kind of get my foot in the door for doing something like this. And, right, I'm going way too deep on this. Let me just say that it was such a dream realized. Okay, when I got the opportunity to meet Butch Lukic, the producer, and I had sent a reel in for the film, and I can't say enough great things about Butch. And for one thing, he's so decisive. He knows what he wants, and when from the very first moment that we met, we started, talking about ideas. We even discussed the idea, which I won't, and for anyone who hasn't seen the film, I won't spoil it, but there's some very specific philosophical things happening in the music as far as its approach to story. We talked about those things on our very first meeting before I had, written a note of music. And then after that first meeting, my wife and I had just moved, and I was in the process of building a new studio. So all of my studio was basically in pieces in the dining room. And I woke up at 4 a.m. the morning, 8 hours after I met Butch, and sat in front of my system and sketched out like, this is what I think this score should be. And then picture came.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was meant to be.
And I love it how you were, and you, I love it how you were projecting a successful outcome from the beginning. Like the very moment the universe starts suggesting things, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go and grab this. So.
Yeah. I think you have to. I mean, if you are going to be in some ways crazy enough to pursue a career in the arts, you have to believe in yourself.
Totally.
If you do not believe in yourself, you're never going to get anyone.
No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to do it for you.
Yeah. And I think too, and I think this is a muscle that you exercise, the more skin in the game that you have, as I've been in this longer and longer, I've started to you get to a place where you're confident. Like, I know whatever the client thinks of this, this is, this is a good piece of music. And if they want something different, it's not going to be, well, the music's terrible. We want something different. It's like, this is great, but we had something, else in mind,
Yeah, completely.
But in case of Long Halloween, I just felt like, and this is one of the, this is such a great thing when this happens, when you're with the filmmaker and you're just on the same page. And I sent them my first draft of what I thought, we could do with the score. After, of course, he and I had a conversation about it, and he was like, "Yep, that's it. Run with it."
Wow.
So it was great. It was a dream experience. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it was like similar vibration frequencies between the two individuals, and it's really good. I do appreciate like good suggestions always, because those are the ones that make you like get out of your comfort zone and try different things that might end up impressing yourself at times. Do you have any plans of like scoring a video game at some point?
I can't say I didn't think you might ask me that question, and I certainly hope so.
Yeah. What type of video game would you like it to be?
I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid.
No. Wow.
And got back into it. Probably about 5 years ago. My cousin got back into it, and ironically, we had played together. His first game was with me when we were kids. Then he got back into it, and now it seems like the world's back into it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it'd be fun to do something in the fantasy realm, in that kind of world. But that being said, I mean, I'm just a total geek. I'll score superheroes all day long and then watch a superhero movie at night. It is like, I have no. There's no there's no quota for me when it comes to science fiction, superheroes, fantasy stuff. So I that may sound like a vague answer, but I would just be. I think a lot of the games that I've seen live in that world, anyways. So
yeah,
that's what I'd be into. Yeah,
and like I feel like now's the time, because as gaming proliferates at such a quick pace, all of a sudden game scoring has evolved in such an impressive way. Like, we came from the Koji Kondo stuff, like this guy playing keyboards and and making the best out of MIDI sounds for the first time in who knows.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have guys like Jesper Kid scoring Assassin's Creed with a whole orchestration. Yeah. Then you have guys like Mick Gordon who take an 8-string guitar and a synth and start smacking the devil's hip. I really, it's really interesting. We've talked a lot on the program and over on our podcast about how all of a sudden gaming is like every single form of entertainment in one. You have storytelling, you have cinematics, you have cutscenes, you have gameplay, you have like cognitive stimulation, rewards, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's such a good time to be a geek, dude. Like, yeah, man, kind of funny
Yeah.
because I'm 29 right now. Back when I was at school, geeks were like the weird kids of the classroom. And I'm sure it was the
Yeah.
case for you as well. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, we're living times where being a geek is actually cool. Like the geeky guy is attractive, the geeky guy is cool, and he's like the center of attention all the time. So it's pretty interesting. So let me ask you, Michael, what do you do for, like, whenever you're not doing music or sleeping? What do you do for fun? I imagine you probably, besides superhero movies and maybe video games, D&D, what do you do for fun? What do you like to do for fun? Like to disconnect for a couple of days and cool it down and all that?
Well, my wife and I like to camp. I think there's as you know, there's a ton of technology, and as creative as the process it is very software and hardware driven.
Totally.
And so when I get those opportunities, I try to get as far away from technology as possible. So we camp, or we'll play board games, or Dungeons and Dragons for that matter, but and to be fair, I have not. For a while, I was actually DMing games and everything, but it's very time consuming, and it's been I'm grateful to say it's been a very busy year. So yeah.
All of a sudden, after becoming an adult, I have like this type of like very specific type of love for board games and trading card games, like actual board games, not like online based or anything. Because all of a sudden, we've been playing video games for so long, and all of a sudden you have like Call of Duties, the Battlefields, the League of Legends, the MOBAs, the Street Fighters, Mortal Kombat, and all of that. You do spend time with your friends, but more often than not, it's in front of a screen on a Discord call or something like that. Whereas, one of my friends, a really good friend of mine, is such a TCG geek. He has like Magic cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and every single trading card game you could think of. He has them all physically. And like sometimes we meet up on Sundays on his house. He will cook for us, and we will play board games and trading card games all the time. And I think like that is a priceless sensation, like sitting with friends face to face, having beers, eating together, like watching each other front to front without the screen. And those are like things kids nowadays find strange. But it's so, it's one of the things that I like, even especially myself, like I took my time to set back, meditate, and rethink, just as you did during the pandemic, like just to take care of my mental health and whatnot. And I was like, dude, that's so priceless. That's really, really so priceless.
Yeah.
Totally.
I 100% agree. And, I don't think any of us are immune to the screen addiction.
Totally.
But when you're talking about things being foreign to certain generations, my niece was here last weekend, and we played I think it's called. Have you heard of this game, Timeline?
Haven't heard of it. No.
Forgive me. I'm gonna take advantage of
go for it.
being in my studio right now. Anyways, it's a game. It's a card game where you lay a card down, and it has the event on it, and you have to guess with your card which one came when. Anyways, long-winded way of saying that it was a huge hit here with my niece, and I think the same way we can't stay off the screens. I think once we get off them, sometimes it's we're all more than ready.
It's super refreshing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Michael, finally, just so I don't take any more of your valuable time.
No, please. It's really a pleasure chatting.
Are there any future projects that you want to tell us about that you're currently working on?
Well, the next one coming out is Teen Titans Go and DC Superhero Girls, Mayhem in the Multiverse. It's Warner Brothers Animation. I had an absolute blast scoring this movie. So that would be the next one to look for. I mean, and by that I mean I love the movie. So I think everyone will too. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Michael, where can we find your work? Where can we find your social media? What's your social media handle for the fans out there?
My website is michaelgatt.com, so just my name.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find my work on Spotify and HBO Max and Netflix and everywhere, like that kind of, you can see and Apple TV and all that. But, and I don't actually have any social media.
You don't? You might be asking why.
It's just that we could spend a whole other interview on.
It's a scary rabbit hole.
Answering that question, but I tried it for a while and it just wasn't for me. And I think maybe part of that too is what we talked about with the screen time too. It's I'm in here writing music sometimes 12, 15 hours a day. That's all on a screen, So I kind of dig it how all of a sudden you're the antithesis of people who say social media is necessary to do business and to grow up. I'm sure you disagree with that. I don't know if this is a controversial subject or not, but I'll share that. Like I said, I gave it a shot, and I think for me personally, and I'm sure this is the same for everybody. I mean, like school and high school, they were hard for me. I mean, you talked about geeks then being outliers, and how that has changed in many ways. But in any case, I don't know. I think it just, it's just it is a rabbit hole. And I think that I just don't know. I don't know if there's a lot going on our phones that I don't know that we're really totally ready for as Homo sapiens. How about if I just say that?
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
So,
overwhelming.
But I can tell you too. I know that I think anyone who tells you, and this idea is not original to me, but I think anyone tells you that you need to do X, Y, and Z to make it in whatever you're pursuing is just giving you the numbers of a winning lottery ticket that's already won. It worked for them. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that has to be your path. So if you're on social media and you feel like it's working for you, and to each their own. But for me, I feel like my life's going the way. My life's just fine. My life is just fine without it. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's a super healthy way of thinking because social media becomes pretty stressful more often than not. But yeah, Michael, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence tonight. I'm super happy of getting to meet you. You have no idea. You're such an admirable and inspiring gentleman. And look forward to DC superhero girls and a smash of Mayhem in the Multiverse. You said
with Teen Titans Go, yeah.
Teen Titans Go, absolutely. Teen Titans is quite rad. Not gonna lie. Michael, thank you so much. And guys, this is gonna be it for us. Thank you so much for staying until the end. And we'll catch you up in the next one.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Cheers.